of you may not know this about me, but I was never gifted with math, but I did find a problem I could solve. So if you have 13 apples in one hand and 10 oranges in the other hand, what do you have?
Big hands.
Really big hands. Now, for the National Day, I really wish it had been the 18th today, because if it were, we would have National Chocolate Cupcake Day, Hagfish Day, National No Beard Day. But no, today is the 19th. And Ron Barron reminded me just moments ago that today is International Credit Union Day. However, and that's wonderful. However, I did want to share with you that today is National Seafood Bisque Day. Isn't that awesome? Seafood bisque is a smooth, creamy, and highly seasoned soup of French origin. It's made from lobster, crab, shrimp, or crayfish, and seafood lovers celebrate by enjoying a bowl of tasty soup made from the catch of the day. So we will now officially begin our meeting with, I think Hurst is here. My country is the sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing, land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrims' pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring. And Betsy Schlossman will do our invocation today.
Was failing me as I tried to use my notes to write things down. It wouldn't let me. Anyway, I would like us at this moment to take a moment to reflect on why we are here today. Take a moment to leave those busy jobs, the demanding day that you had earlier this morning, and focus in on just being here now. Think about our projects and how we can bring more to bear on those projects to be more successful, to reach that goal to end polio, which is our focus this month. Think about our other service projects around the world and those here in the community, and how can each of us serve and live up to the Rotary motto of service above self. Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy. Guest introductions today will be done by Cody Frederickson.
Thank you, President Grace. Welcome, everybody. I don't know how long it's going to take. My fellow Rotarians will figure out that they should never offer me the microphone because you're likely not to get it back. But, yes, like Ron said, it is International Credit Union Day, so if you see a bunch of people running around passing out money and doing favors for each other, it's fellow credit union employees. So, welcome, everyone. First introduction is from Betsy. And as you introduce Betsy, per our club tradition, please stand until the end, and then we will give appreciation at the end.
This is a young lady that you have met before. She's here from Belgium. This is our exchange student, Taya Flish, who is attending her senior year at Seaman High School.
David Beck also has a guest.
My guest is Ariana Bejaramaru, and she is a Rotary Youth Exchange student from Romania.
Welcome. Also, Gordon Langsford.
I'm honored today to introduce collectively at this table our guest, Paul Wilkie. Paul is the newest preacher in town, and he's the senior pastor at Countryside United Methodist Church. He's Kansas born and raised, has served several congregations in Kansas, went to seminary at SMU, and now he's in Topeka. And he did play basketball.
Katie Cooper also has a guest.
This is my colleague Rob Reynolds at AT&T
Legislative Director.
Welcome. And last but not least, Karen Hiller.
My guest is Tin Royal. Katie is actually involved in the Topeka host for this program. Tin is from Myanmar. He is a staffer with the Shin Party there, and he is part of an American Council of Young Political Leaders fellowship program. And he is here with two others, one from Indonesia and one from Thailand, on a fellowship for a month. He's already met some people here, as he has shadowed me, or Katie has arranged for visits, and he may meet a number of you before he's done. They are particularly interested in, they're building a new government, hopefully one that's a federal structure in Myanmar, and they are here to figure out how it works on the street and what the different variations are. So we've been introducing him to the government. He's particularly interested in local government, but it's so interesting to be in a place where government does a lot of things and runs things in Myanmar, and here, private sector, we volunteer, we have staff, we have different kinds of organizations. So if anybody thinks that he would benefit from meeting them, let me know. Thank you.
Thank you. Please help me welcome all guests.
Thank you, Cody. This, as it was already mentioned, this month's featured charity is Polio Plus. So I've already put in my $5. Yes, I'm shaming you, so please be generous. We do have a few announcements. We'll start with our Polio Plus announcements for the day. And Sam, while you're coming up, I'll just remind all of you that a week from Saturday is the Topeka South Pumpkin Run. There's some flyers on the table. You can register on our website. There's a link. You can show up that day, and it's $30. And I think it'd be really great if our club would help support their effort as well. So, Sam?
Thank you, President Grace. I'm here to take a minute of your time to talk about Polio Plus, but first of all, I want to introduce a fellow Rotarian as well, Dick Knoll, and Dick is going to come up and tell you a little bit about the history of Polio Plus and this club. I think you'll find this to be pretty interesting. Dick?
You just hope it's going to be interesting. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, President Grace, and good afternoon, Rotarians. This is exactly how Polio Plus got started in our club, passing the cup around, and that was in 1984. We passed the cup, and that was even before Polio Plus was named. I'm going to ask a few questions by a show of hands. Who was a member of Rotary in 1985? Okay, there's a few, all right? And in 1985, Polio Plus was officially kicked off by Rotary International and by the Rotary Foundation. Now, in 85, we again just kept passing the cups, and it wasn't very formal. And so the next question is, who was a member in 1987? Is it the same group? Probably. Okay, so 87 is when Polio Plus really got started out in the clubs. And that was the year that we got a quota from Rotary International. We had a committee of 43 members of this club, and we raised a significant amount of money. Now, in 1985 or 87, that committee was formed, and my recollection of that 40, anybody a member of that committee of 43 that met at the Boy Scout office? Don Townsend was the Boy Scout exec and the committee chair of the Polio Plus committee. And there were a number of people involved. Specifically, I'll say Alan Raleigh, who was probably the lead fundraiser in this, and also John Knoll, who happened, is my father, Steve's father, and was president of the club at that time. And they had responsibility, and Steve's recollection is that we had a goal of $34,000. And in the end, we raised over $65,000. in one fundraising campaign. It was amazing. And nobody could really believe that our club could even come close to reaching our goal, which was the 34. We raised 65. It was remarkable. And we've had Polio Plus campaigns since, but nothing like that startup. And that was back in the day when if you gave $1,000, you gave $1,000. And that's what you got credit for at the foundation. Of course, now you're going to hear more about this. You know, you get more credits. Your buck's worth more now toward Paul Harris Fellow. All right. So we were very successful, and we raised so much money and so many $1,000 contributions that we awarded Paul Harris Fellows in mass. In other words, we rolled people up, members 10 at a time, to give Paul Harris Fellow awards. Otherwise, we've been doing one a week for at least a year, because it was remarkable the amount of money and the commitment that this club had to rolling out Polio Plus. And that committee was remarkable too, because every member was contacted and had a personal appeal. Okay, so the result of that, in 1988 there were 125 countries that had polio cases, and now we're down to less than 5 countries. I believe it looked like it was 5 now. You know, we have leakage every now and then and they pounce on it, but we're getting closer every year to getting that done. So I have one last question, and that is, in 1987, what other significant event happened in Rotary? That is correct. Women were admitted. And is Joan Wagner here? No, Joan's not here. But Joan Wagner and Zula Bennington Green, Peggy of the Flint Hills, were the first 2 women members in 1987. So we admitted women as soon as it was allowed, and we did it. So 87, that was the year that John Knoll was president. I think that's probably why I'm up here. But it was quite a year for Rotary. Thank you.
Thanks, Dick. Okay, here comes the pitch. Does anybody know who this guy is? This guy has a lot of money. A lot of money. And there are people in this club who I think there are some secret big donors, big dogs out there who I think are going to come forward before this is all over. So if you want to be my little personal Bill Gates and make Sam feel good, and our goal is $20,000, and we're not there yet, but you know that the match is 6 times, and part of it is some of this guy's money right here. So we are looking for, we appreciate all of you who've given already. We'll take anything you have, but we need a couple of big dogs to step up and push us over our $20,000 goal. If we could do something even close to what they did back when John was president, that would be fantastic. So that's my beat 'em up speech today, and make you feel guilty because you're not as rich as Bill Gates is. Now, just one last thing before I go. You all know about the Paul Harris Awards. We have people on a list that look something like this. If you're in yellow, it means that you have less than $500 more to give, and you can get a Paul Harris Award, or you can get another Paul Harris Award if you already have one. So if you're interested in that, you can talk to Linda or me if you want to get close, and that again goes for the match. What else do I have to say before I get thrown off the stage here? Say again? Oh, the first Friday. Oh gosh, the first Friday people did really good. If you recall, a couple of weeks ago, the first Friday folks, I can't think of the name of the business, Joni knows. Prairie Glass. Leaping Llamas. Oh, Leaping Llamas. They donated half of their revenue for the day of First Friday, and they gave $558 of their very own money that day, which with the match came to $3,348. So Thanks to them. Thanks, Joni. Joni did a great job on that. That's all I have to say, but we are looking for all of you to step up and make your Polio Plus contribution. Next Tuesday is World Polio Day. Put that on your calendar and say a prayer for those who are still afflicted by this disease. And let's make our goal, and I'll give you an update on that next week. Thank you.
And I have the credit card swipe, so I'll
I will tell you real quick before I go, though, we stand at a little over $12,000 so far given, but we're looking for 20. So if we need your contributions, that comes out to about a match of a total of about $72,000, and we need to get that in by October 31st, which is 2 weeks from a couple of days ago, 31st. Thank you.
For your commitment to this and all the work you're doing to make this happen for our club. While our new member Eric Grosbich is making his way up along with Blanche, I will remind you, many of you already know this, but on, I believe it was Monday evening, there was a peace party, the annual meeting from the Center for Peace and Justice. And I just have to say, on Tuesday, I don't know if you saw, but it was front page news. We had 3 of the Peace Builder honorees are actually members of our club, and I think that really deserves a mention. The individual Peace Builder was John Christensen. Organization Peace Builder, Kathleen Marker from the YWCA, and the Media Peace Builder, Zach Ahrens from the Capital Journal. The Rotary Club, yes. Our Rotary Club was actually mentioned several times during the evening, and I'm just so proud, and congratulations to everyone, and we really are making a difference. I'm very pleased now. You guys want to come up here? Yes, ma'am. Exactly. No. He said it, I didn't. We are very, very pleased today to introduce our newest member. This is Eric Grosbich. I'll tell you a little bit about him. Eric is a PhD, is that right? EDD, currently serving as the Vice President for Student Life at Washburn University, where he has several roles. He has previously served as Assistant Vice Chancellor and Dean of Students at the University of Missouri in Kansas City. He has led a number of strategic planning initiatives. He received his bachelor's degree in business and master's in counseling from Fort Hays State and his Ed.D. in educational policy and leadership from the University of Kansas. And just 3 little fun facts about him. First of all, he wanted to be, as a kid, he wanted to grow up to be an electrical engineer. And so, of course, now he's working with students. His favorite toy was Stretch Armstrong. And his comfort level in the kitchen, he eats well. So you're going to find a whole bunch more interesting and fun things on a little sheet on the tables that he filled out, so I think that would be very good. And I will mention Blanche is his sponsor. So today, on behalf of the board and membership of the Downtown Topeka Rotary Club, it is with great pleasure that we welcome you as the newest member of our club. We look forward to the fellowship that we will share, as well as your participation in many club projects that make our community, our country, and our world a better place to live. As you know, Rotary is an international organization of business and professional people pledged to uphold the highest ethical and moral standards. And today, what we would like to do is present you with several things. Blanche, if you'll take. One is your new member packet, which has a whole lot of information in it. We also would like to give you your Rotary pin, which we hope you will wear with great pride, and hopefully it'll stimulate a lot of conversation and interest in Rotary. And and Blanche is so good with her hands, she's going to actually try to pin it on him while we watch in silence. And we do hope you wear this regularly. We also will have a t-shirt for you now that we kind of know what your size is. We have also your red badge, and we ask that you wear this at our meetings, and you can leave them at our meetings. This red badge will hopefully soon turn into a blue badge, And information about how to do that will be in your new member packet and in your orientation. And the reason we have little activities is so that you will become engaged and involved in Rotary and in our club. And please know, once you're a Rotarian at our club, you are an international Rotarian, welcome at any Rotary club. Finally, we'd like to give you a Rotary coin. That's this year's version, which I think is really pretty. And on the back is the 4-way test. And we'd like for you to enjoy that. You may keep it, or after you've enjoyed it for a little while, pass it on to someone else. It has very, very good advice on it. So we are very pleased to welcome our newest member, Eric Grosvich. Let's stand. And our speaker today will be introduced by Lucky DeFries.
Well, really a pleasure for me to be able to introduce somebody that I've known for many years, has been a friend for many years. He specifically asked that I keep this brief. When the Attorney General makes a request, especially if you're an attorney, you try and accommodate that request. So I'll do my best. But Derek Schmidt was elected the 44th Attorney General of Kansas in 2010 and was re-elected in 2014. Under his leadership, the office is focused on prosecuting crimes against children, protecting senior citizens from scams and ripoffs, and recovering record-setting amounts of money for Kansas consumers and taxpayers, and providing professional legal services for the state of Kansas, and standing up against illegal overreach by the federal government. Attorney General Schmidt has personally successfully argued 2 Kansas murder cases before the United States Supreme Court. He's led the successful efforts to strengthen Kansas laws against human trafficking, toughen penalties for defrauding senior citizens, and from stealing from the Kansas Medicaid program, and to build a modern forensic science laboratory for the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, and to extend the do not call list to recover consumer cell phones and to strengthen consumer privacy laws. Attorney General Schmidt has received many awards. I'll not go through all of those, but of significance, in 2017 he was elected president of the National Association of Attorney Generals. Prior to his tenure as Attorney General, he served in the Kansas Senate, representing part of Southeast Kansas, as chairman of the Agriculture Committee in the Senate, and also was the Senate Majority Leader. He previously served as counsel to Governor Bill Graves, a legislative assistant to Senator Nancy Landon Kassebaum, and as an assistant attorney general for consumer protection. He graduated from Independence High School, studied at Independence Community College, and received his bachelor's degree in journalism from the University of Kansas, master's in international politics from the University of Leicester in the United Kingdom, and his law degree from Georgetown in DC. Also a doctorate in law from the University of Kansas School of Law. Schmidt and his wife Jennifer are the parents of 2 daughters. And with that, please help me welcome Attorney General Derek Schmidt.
Well, thanks. Lucky that you get an A for generosity and a C for brevity, but we'll work on that. It's all good. Thanks very much. Thanks for the invitation to be here. And Tim, I'm glad you're here. I didn't know you were going to be here. If I had known we were going to have folks trying to learn something about how we govern ourselves here, I'd have stayed at the office and tweeted in all my remarks, because apparently that's what we do these days as a substitute for in-person discourse. Who knew? But we're glad you're here. Thank you very much. I'm going to tell you a story, maybe suggest what the point of the story is, and then talk a little bit about consumer protection, because that's our mission today, is to hopefully leave you with a few ideas to contemplate on how to make sure the money stays in our pocket that we worked hard to put in our pocket lawfully and properly in the first place. So that's the game plan over the next period of time here. Story is this. It's a true story. All my stories are true, but this one's especially true. First time I was applying for this job, as in campaigning for this job, I was up in a county along the Nebraska border. I'm not going to tell you which one, because I've discovered it's a very small state and everybody knows everybody. I was downtown in a small community in the county, and walking up and down downtown meeting folks like you do, and I walked into a little restaurant, cafe, coffee shop there, and there's a woman, looked to be about my mother's age, sitting there alone, drinking coffee or eating breakfast. And so I went up and introduced myself, because that's what we do in my line of work when it's campaign season, the most unnatural thing in the world. You know, somehow we think it's going to make people like us and want to support us if we go interrupt their private time while they're eating and shake their hands. But that's what we do. And so I introduced myself, and she had a big smile on her face, said, well, sit down and join me. I said, all right. So I sat down and we talked for a little bit, and she asked me the kinds of questions you'd expect in that setting. What's your name and where are you from? And are you married? Do you have kids? Why are you doing this? What do you want to do if you get to do the job? That sort of thing. And so we had a nice conversation, probably lasted 10 minutes, maybe a little longer. And finally I stood up and excused myself and said, appreciate your vote, and walked away, and I didn't think anything else about it. So not too much longer after that, maybe a week or two later, I'm home in Independence, and I go to my mailbox, and there's a letter, standard size envelope, hand addressed to me, has this woman's name and the town that I met her in and the return address. I thought, well, I remember her. It was a nice conversation. I wonder what she has to say. So I opened it up. It said, Dear Mr. Schmidt, really appreciated your coming to this town. Enjoyed the time we spent talking. You seem like a fine young man, which is, you know, great compliment, the young part especially, which is why I felt that I owed it to you to write and let you know I'm not voting for you. Because I think we have too many lawyers in government already. Yeah. It's obviously not a Kansas senator over there. I don't know that. So, you know, in the electronic age, they say you should never reply to an email in haste, sleep on it overnight. Well, this wasn't electronic, it was paper, so I didn't think about that rule. So I sat down and penned her out a letter in response, which I intended to be thoughtful, but in hindsight, probably I should have slept on it. But I essentially wrote, Dear ma'am, it was nice to meet you too. Thanks for taking time to write. You do realize I'm running for Attorney General, so there's a very good chance, no matter who wins the race, we're going to have another lawyer in government. I'd appreciate your vote. I never heard from her again, so I'm not sure how that was received. I did win her county, so either I didn't offend her too badly or she doesn't have a lot of friends. I'm not sure. I'm not sure which it was. I've thought about that story a lot over the last 7+ years that I've gotten to do this job. There are probably a handful of morals one could draw from that, but one of them that I, at least at this point, is sort of predominant for me is this. I think it's a true statement that most days, at least, most Kansans do not wake up and the first thing on their mind in the morning is, I wonder what the Kansas Attorney General's office is focused on today. In fact, I suspect most folks don't think a lot about the AG's office at all unless you have business that comes in front of us for some reason, and that's okay. In fact, I sort of kid with the guys, don't take offense, Melissa, I sort of kid with the guys at work, you know, every day we're not in the paper, that's a good day at the office of the Attorney General. It means we're just, you know, doing our work professionally and solidly and hopefully well. But the flip side of that is, it is important that we talk sometimes about at least parts of what we do. And one of the things that I want to talk about just a few minutes today is our consumer protection work, not just because that was the subject of the invitation to be here, and not just because I love our consumer work. I used to do consumer litigation for the office for a short stint years ago before I got to come back and do the work again in this role. But also because I have a statutory duty to talk about it. The legislature, bless their hearts, back in the 70s when they enacted the State Consumer Protection Act, Kansas Consumer Protection Act, wrote into there an obligation to do public outreach. And I think the theory was pretty straightforward because the AG's office is unique in consumer protection work around the state. We're the only, we share authority with every county or district attorney, but the reality is we're the only ones that do this work statewide, and we do it in almost every county routinely, including Shawnee County. The only two counties we're not in very often sometimes are Sedgwick and Johnson, because they like to do their own, but most of the local prosecutors are up to their eyeballs in all kinds of other stuff we don't have to focus on, and they're happy to allow us to play sort of the frontline consumer role. And so I think the theory was, because we see what's going on out there everywhere, if we talk about it and share it, forewarned is forearmed, and how much better if you spot a scam, avoid losing the money in the first place, because we got plenty of work chasing money down on the back end. We like doing it, but we like it even better when we don't have to do it because people didn't lose their money in the first place. So that's the spirit and why we're here. I wanted to share a couple, or if I'm not too wordy, maybe three pieces on that, and we'll call it a presentation. Number one is this. I love our consumer work. I love doing this stuff. We can talk at length if you want about the minutia of the Lemon Law or the No Call Act, which actually does function. It just doesn't do what we want it to do, which is stop bad guys from calling us. But it does at least stop good guys from calling us if they're law-abiding telemarketers, and there are plenty of those out there. So it serves its purpose. Its purpose just isn't quite what most of us would like it to be. You know, we can do that, but I realize that's sort of wonkish stuff that most folks aren't focused on. And it's that conclusion that we sort of figured out early on our watch. Just as most Kansans don't wake up thinking what's the AG's office focused on or doing today, they also aren't focused on the minutia of consumer protection law. They just know when they or their loved one or their friends get ripped off, they're mad as heck and they want somebody to help them out. We looked at our numbers early on our watch and said, how come more people aren't asking us for help? I mean, maybe it's just that people aren't getting ripped off in Kansas. I doubt that's the case. Why don't we have more requests for assistance? And fortunately, we didn't have to answer that question for ourselves. We were able to do what we often do in this business, which is look at other states, find somebody who had done the same work, and go ask them what the answer is. And in this case, it happened to be Arkansas. I don't always go copy things I find in Arkansas, but in this case, I looked at their consumer operation and happened to know the guy who was Attorney General there at the time. He's since left office and got a new one. And I knew that they had asked the same question when he started serving. They hired a fairly expensive, but I think very good marketing firm to do essentially a market study to answer the question, why is it our Kansans aren't asking for help when we know they're getting ripped off at a greater rate than they're asking for help? And the answer was pretty straightforward. It makes good sense once you hear it. It's not really an intimidation thing. It's when you've been ripped off, the last thing you want to do is go to some government website that is difficult to understand. It talks in legalese. You don't know if you're talking to the right people or if it's this agency or if it's that agency. All you know is you want someone to help you, and people would get frustrated and not ask for help. They'd just suck it up and take their loss. What Arkansas did was launched a branding campaign. They called it creatively Got Your Back Arkansas. And the theory was, all you got to remember if you've been ripped off is the AG's office in Arkansas has got your back. They even had a website, gotyourbackarkansas.org. Call them, ask them for help. If it's not them, let them practice law. They'll get you hooked up with the right folks. They're your first stop. It sounds really simple. They saw the number of requests for assistance go up by, I think it was around 25%, and stay there. And nothing else had changed other than looking more human and normal on the front end. With their permission, we copied that. We didn't pay for a market study. We used theirs and assumed something similar was true in Kansas. We set up our consumer protection website and got rid of all kinds of arcane references to statutes and this sort of thing, and tried to group information in a sort of accessible, usable way. And we routinely now train the people that answer the phones to talk in human terms on the consumer side as opposed to talking in mechanical terms. And we've seen similar results. Requests for help went up about 25% and stayed there. And we think it's a good thing. We also do a much better job on the back end of routing complaints before they get filed. The office used to get a whole lot of complaints that after sitting on somebody's desk for a while and being processed, the correct conclusion was it shouldn't have been in this office. This is a securities complaint. This is an insurance complaint. This is a banking complaint, whatever it may be, and then you got to have folks start over. We now try to get those routed to the right agency in the first place. I know that all sounds basic, but the bottom line is it's customer service, and I think it's been a positive outcome. So here's what you need to know. We had enough pride that we didn't just steal Arkansas's slogan. That would have been a no-no. Got your back, Kansas. We have more dignity than that. So we are in your corner, Kansas. We had a little competition at the office. That's what the gang chose. In your corner, Kansas kind of works nicely. The corner carved out of the state, the rectangle. It's a very nice gesture. In your corner, Kansas. InYourCornerKansas.org. And do check it out, not just because I'm talking about it today, but there's, I think, some really good info on there. Just tips, what are common scams, what we're seeing, what's prevalent at any given moment. And it's part of the way that not just ad hoc like today, but in an ongoing way, we try to do what the legislature told us to do, which is push out information on how to keep money in your pocket and what to be mindful of at any given moment. That's item number one. Item number two is more specific. One of the things that we deal with on the consumer side is the fallout from data breaches, information that's supposed to be kept secure by somebody and isn't. And I want to talk about for a moment just one in particular that's in the news a lot these days, and that's the Equifax breach. Here is what, in my estimation at least, we all ought to know about Equifax. I realize we all get numb to data breach headlines because it seems like there's one every week, and they all sort of run together. Equifax is different. It is different, and it's different for two reasons. It's different because it is very, very large. The only breach we're aware of, there may have been others, but the only one we're aware of that compromised more records than Equifax was the Yahoo breach, which we've now learned just this month is about 3 billion records. They previously said about 1 billion records, so it's an enormous breach, Yahoo is. But the second, Equifax, as far as I know, is number two at 145 million Americans' information compromised. Equifax tells us it's more than 1.1 million Kansans' records compromised, so more than a third of the state. And if you exclude, kids who are young enough, they probably don't have a credit report or credit account. It's probably closer to 1 in 2 adult Kansans whose information is now out there as a result of the Equifax breach. So it's big. But the second thing that's different about Equifax, and it's the combination of these two that is the reason I'm talking about it today, is the nature of the information that was breached. In the Yahoo breach, for example, most of what got out there, as far as we know, were usernames and passwords for Yahoo email accounts, which can be remedied. You can get it, it's a pain in the neck. I'm not saying it's good, but it can be remedied. You get a new account, you get a new password, you've remedied the problem at least going forward. Not the case with Equifax. For those 145 plus million Americans, 1.1 million Kansans whose information is now out there as a result of that breach, the data set for all of those included at least 4 things. A name, probably a full name, a date of birth, an address, and a social security number. So the holy grail of what identity thieves look for in terms of having the ability to do bad things in your name, particularly financially. And to the best of my knowledge, while you can get a new email address or a new password, I don't know how you get a new social security number. If it's possible, it's certainly not easy or common, and I don't know if it's possible. So this is going to be, if you'll forgive the colloquialism, it's going to be the gift that keeps on giving. I was joking to some folks the other day, because you got to find things to laugh about in this line of work sometimes. If we're really lucky, the Russians did it. Because if we're really lucky, the point of this hack and breach was to show that we aren't secured, and now all of our personal information is sitting on some server at the Kremlin that's probably more secure than the Equifax servers were. But we're probably not that lucky. I mean, we don't know who did it, but we're probably not that lucky. It probably was some international criminal organization that wanted the information for the purpose of making money off the sale of the information. And probably that information for a third of our state, 145 million Americans, is or will be on the dark web somewhere up for sale, making money on the back end, and that's a big problem. So Equifax is different. It's caused us to really focus on breach issues, and I just have 2 thoughts on it. Number one, people say, well, what can we do at this point? I can give you a long list of advice, but here's the bottom line. I don't know what to advise people to do that has a real and actual chance of preventing the ongoing harm of somebody trying to open accounts, open credit, or do bad things with the information they have, other than putting a security freeze on your credit reports. And that's not a perfect fix, but it's the only thing that's fairly prophylactic that I'm aware of that at least means if somebody gets their hands on that information, it makes it much, much more difficult, if not impossible, for them to open bogus credit in your name because they can't get a credit check back from the credit bureaus. It's a pain in the neck, and it's imperfect, but we've recommended it. And that's raised the second point that I think is a discussion that probably the state ought to have, and this will get some of the lobbying types in the room, their ears will perk up on this one, but I think we probably ought to have next spring, which is whether the current Kansas law that governs the process and the cost of placing security freezes on your credit bureau accounts is the law we really want to have. Under Kansas law, it's permissible. Each of the major reporting bureaus, if you ask, they have to put a freeze on your account, but they can charge you up to $10 to put the freeze on, and then up to $10 every time you thaw it yourself so that you can actually engage in commerce and get credit. It's not a whole lot of money, and the cost is waived if you're already the victim of ID theft. Of course, in a position where a third of the country, half the state, may be a victim of ID theft, it seems to us that asking for waiver is reasonable, and we've asked for that, but it's permissive at this point. They have the authority to charge. The question, I think, probably is, should they? And there are real policy debates there. Obviously, the cost has to be borne by somebody, so if it's not the individual user, it'll be spread out among others who are paying for the service. But I think it's a policy debate we probably ought to bring to the legislature and let them decide. Because I'm telling you, the number one thing we're hearing from folks who are ticked around the state right now is, how come this company that I never did business with, and in many cases have never heard of, had all my information, and now I have to pay money because they screwed up in order to protect myself, which is not an unreasonable question. So data breach is kind of a big thing. Last thing I wanted to mention today is this. We have really tried on our watch, and this year in particular with the National Association work, to focus more generally on elder abuse issues, including but not limited to financial abuse, scams targeted at seniors. A few years ago, some of you here I think worked on this legislation. The legislature enacted a new mistreatment of an elder person criminal statute. I went and watched most of the process. We were involved in the discussions, and the biggest controversy was, I think it was the House Judiciary Committee. They spent probably 30 minutes debating at what age one becomes an elder person. Was it 60, 65, or 70? They ultimately, for that piece of law, came up with 70, and yes, I think a majority of the committee was in the 60s in terms of their personal ages, so there may be a correlation. The point is, that's the only thing that was controversial about it. Other than that, it was a consensus proposal. Everybody agreed, Democrat, Republican, rural, urban, whatever your philosophy, that this is something that's an appropriate priority for the government to be focused on. I certainly agree with that. If you look at the data, and some of you here know it better than I, but there are about 400,000 Kansans today who are age 65 or older. Wichita State does their economic projections every year, looking into the crystal ball of the future about where we have been and where we're headed. And they project if current trends hold, there's no reason to think they won't. We've been on this trend line for 100+ years, and it's unlikely to alter substantially, that number will double to about 800,000 Kansans over the course of the next half century. So this is a problem, a dynamic, I should say, that's going to get larger, not smaller. When you couple that with the CDC numbers that tell us that about 1 in 10 persons over the age of 65 who still live at home, this isn't the in-facility numbers, this is still at home, can expect to be a victim of elder abuse in the course of their lifetime, whether it's third-party scams, financial abuse, whether it's fiduciary abuse, a trusted person, a family member, a loved one who was given management of their finances and then decided to serve themselves instead of their fiduciary obligation, whether it's physical or sexual abuse, and we see those cases as well. Just demographically and numerically, those cases are going to grow, and we're really not prepared from a public safety standpoint statewide to deal with that reality, and particularly in parts of the state where the local capacity is less robust, not less capable, just less robust as a function of lesser resources and smaller capacities. So we have started that conversation with the legislature and the administration, and we don't plan to let it up as long as we're around doing this, because I think it's a long-term commitment. We've added, through reorganization, some capacity at our office to take more elder abuse criminal referrals from counties. We were declining previously because we were full up on homicides and child sex crimes and drug trafficking crimes, and we weren't taking for prosecution what are generally viewed as smaller crimes, but they're still really important. And we knew there was a demand, so we're saying yes more often now, but not nearly as much as we can. So anyhow, that's kind of the world on the consumer side, and bottom line is, don't suspend common sense, and if you need something, buy it at your own pace, not because somebody solicits you. And if you have friends, neighbors, loved ones, folks at church, folks that you visit at the nursing home, whatever, who you have a good relationship with, and who perhaps you love, and watch out for, if you see something, say something, because if something appears to be out of the ordinary, it very well may be, and they rely on you and me more than most to sort of intervene and stop things before they get out of hand. So thank you for letting me be here, and appreciate the opportunity.
Derek, thank you very, very much for coming and for sharing those very important ideas with us. I hope you might be able to stay around after for questions if you all would like to visit with him. We have a tradition in our club, rather than giving you a gift or something you don't really want anyway. to donate a book to a local school in your honor. So before you leave, if you will sign this, this will go to Ross Elementary School.
Thank you.
I do have an announcement that Lee Morris brought some more tomatoes today, and I think there are a few left, so first come, first serve. Next week, we will be back at the Ramada, and Mayor Larry Wolgast will be our speaker. So I want to leave you with these words today, again from Andrew Young, and this came from the Rotary International Convention. I love this. If you live by the four-way test, you can't help but make the world a better place. So please stand, and we will say the four-way test +1. Of the things we think,
say, or do, is the truth, is fair to all concerned, will build goodwill and better friendships, will be beneficial to all concerned,
and will be fun.